Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. Early in the morning, just as day is dawning, he picks up all the post bags in his van. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Everybody knows his bright red van. All his friends will smile as he waves to greet them. Maybe you can never be sure there'll be knock, ring, letters through your door. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man.
One sunny morning, Pat was hurrying along the road with a van full of letters and parcels for the people of Greendale. Suddenly, he had to stop. It was Alf Thompson driving his sheep across the road. Don't worry, Jess. They won't eat you. The sheep went into a field, and Pat was on his way again. His next stop was at the village school. Where is everybody? The children were bringing things to school for a display. Charlie Pringle had a bunch of flowers. Lucy Selby had brought a basket of eggs. My, your hens have been busy. And Tom Pottage had some day-old chicks. Hey, mind how you go. Whilst looking at all these things, Pat had forgotten his letters. But Bill Thompson came along with a cup of tea. Thank you, said Pat. And Bill took the letters. Sarah Gilbertson came for his cup. Have you done? She said. Nearly. Thanks, Sarah. That was grand. Goodbye.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. Early in the morning, just as day is dawning, he picks up all the post bags in his van. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Everybody knows his bright red van. All his friends will smile as he waves to greet them. Maybe you can never be sure. There'll be knock, ring, letters through your door. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man.
Pat was getting on well with his round. He locked his van, and as it was a nice day for a picnic, he took his sandwiches to a field on the hill above Thompson ground. It's been an easy day today. It was so warm that Pat soon fell asleep. Oh dear. But Mrs. Thompson's hens were wide awake, and Pat had left his sandwich box open, with his keys neatly beside it. The noise woke Pat just in time to chase after his sandwiches. And then he turned round in time to see a cheeky hen stealing his keys. Oh, oops! I must get my keys back. I can't open the van or deliver my letters without them. Oh, so that's where you've got to. Oh dear, it's a long time since I climbed a tree, but here goes. Oops. Pat was just reaching out when the hen dropped the keys and flew off. Now the keys were stuck in the tree, and as Pat was climbing towards them, the branch gave way and... Whoa! Oh! Right in the middle of a prickly bush. Ouch! Mrs. Thompson had heard the commotion and came to see what was going on. Pat told her about the thieving hen. "Dearie me," said Mrs. Thompson, "the little devil. She must think she's a magpie or some such. We'd better get a ladder and see if we can reach your keys." "There'll be no more post today unless we can," said Pat. "That won't do," said Mrs. Thompson, "especially when I'm expecting a letter from Auntie Jean to say whether she's coming for Easter or not." So they went for the ladder. "I'll take it now." they're here all right. Look, I've got them. There's something else up here. Lots of things. It's like a magpie's nest. My. He brought everything down to show Mrs. Thompson. There were all kinds of shiny things. There's my wedding ring that went missing last Easter. I thought I'd lost it down the sink. That's all right. I'll get it down. Mind your head. As my hens have stolen your sandwiches, you'd better come and have some dinner with me. There's plenty to spare. That's very nice of you. Pat was glad he'd lost his sandwiches when he saw what a good dinner Mrs. Thompson had cooked. Mrs. Thompson was glad too. She'd got her ring back. But it was soon time to be off. Thanks for the meal. It was lovely. Come on, Jess. Jess. Come on. Just fancy, said Pat. A magpie hen. Who ever heard of such a thing? Pat stopped to tell Sam Waldron about the Magpie Hen. "You'd better keep away from my van," he said. "I wonder if that's where my tie pin went." Sounds odd. Oh, just needs a clean. When Pat saw Miss Hubbard, he told her about the Magpie Hen. "Well, I lost a silver earring last month," she said. "And a hat pin. I wonder if they're up a tree somewhere. I must go and see Mrs. Thompson." On the way home, Pat met Alf Thompson on his tractor and stopped to tell him about the Magpie Hen. Alf couldn't think of anything he'd lost, but he thought it was a good story. Pat had a letter for him. "Ooh, one for me. I'll not lose this anyway. Cheerio. Bye." Pat saw some real magpies on the way home and wondered if they had taught Mrs. Thompson's hens to steal. As for Jess, he was asleep.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. Early in the morning, just as day is dawning, he picks up all the post bags in his van. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Everybody knows his bright red van. All his friends will smile as he waves to greet them. Maybe you can never be sure there'll be knock, ring, letters through your door. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man.
There was a thick fog in Greendale. Pat had to go slowly along the winding lanes. Someone waved to him, but he couldn't make out who it was. Good morning, he shouted. He was late when he reached the village post office. Good morning, Mrs. Goggins. Sorry I'm late. No need to hurry, said Mrs. Goggins. There's no sign of the letters yet. It'll be this nasty fog. Come and sit yourself down and have a nice cup of tea. Thank you. That'll be lovely after that foggy drive, said Pat. I'll just brew up. Ah, that's lovely. Pat was just getting warm and comfortable, and Mrs. Goggins was just bringing the tea and biscuits when ping went the shop's doorbell. It's early for a customer, said Mrs. Goggins. That's a good cup of tea, said Pat. But Mrs. Goggins came in with the mailbag. It's here, she said. What, already? How did he get through so quickly? There's no fog down at Pencaster. It's only in Greendale. So he's not as late as we thought he'd be. Just as I'd picked my favourite biscuit. Oh, well, no time for that now. I'd better get on my way. Hold on, Mrs. Goggins. I'll give you a hand. He helped to sort the letters. Not too many today, thank goodness, with all this fog about. Goodbye. Oh, and thanks for the tea. Mind how you go. It's as thick as ever out here. Pat knew the Greendale roads well enough, but they looked different in the fog, and his lights weren't much help. He must have taken a wrong turn somewhere, so he stopped by a signpost to find out where he was. Oh dear, it wasn't a signpost. only a crossroads sign. Now what? Pat didn't know which way to go. He walked along the lane, trying to see through the fog. I can't see a thing. Oh, I'd better not lose sight of the van. Hey, dear, even my glasses are fogged up. Then he saw someone standing in the field. Why is he so still? It must be Ted Glenn out after rabbits. He'll know the way. I'll pop over with his letter and ask him. Pat walked up very quietly so as not to disturb the rabbits and touched Ted on the shoulder. Ted didn't move. Pat put the letter in Ted's pocket. He still didn't move. Pat gave him a nudge. Oh, it was a scarecrow. Pat did feel silly. He was glad no one saw him. Sorry, Scarecrow. The letter isn't for you. And I don't suppose you can tell me the way in this fog. Goodbye. He was just wondering what to do when he saw some lights coming through the fog. It was Alf Thompson on his tractor. Luckily, he wasn't lost. He soon showed Pat which way to go. Pat was on his way again. He saw Sam's mobile shop parked at the side of the road. Hello, Sam. This fog gets in your throat, doesn't it? Have you got any cough sweets? These'll do the trick, said Sam. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Cheerio. The next stop was at the church. Hello, Pat. Isn't this fog ghastly? Said the Reverend Timms. Don't know how you found your way. What a day for choir practice. But I expect Miss Hubbard will come. Nothing stops her. Thanks, Pat. Go carefully and trust in the Lord. Goodbye. Cheerio, Reverend. When Pat got back to his van, he saw that Jess had gone. Pat looked everywhere. Where could that cat be? Perhaps he'd gone looking for rabbits. Pat set out to seek Jess. He called and called. Jess! Jess, where are you? Jess! Come on, Jess. Hippus, puss, puss, puss. Jess! Jess! Puss, 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 puss. Jess! Come on, Jess. Oh! Come on, Jess. This is no time for hide and seek. Oh! Puss, 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 puss. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Ooh! Where have you been, Jess? This is no time to wander off. Come on. Pat was lost again. Now you've done it, Jess. We're really lost this time. Let's try this way. He couldn't even find the road, let alone his van. Miss Hubbard passed the van on the way to the church. No Pat and no Jess. What could have happened to them? Hello, Vicar. Have you seen Pat? His van's in the road, but there's no sign of him or his cat. Oh, dear. Pat called quite some time ago. They must be lost in the fog. I know what we must do, said Miss Hubbard. We must ring the bells to guide them back to the church. Come along, Reverend. Pull. I wonder why the church bells are ringing. They don't usually ring for choir practice. Still, they're as good as a foghorn. We'll soon find the way now. There's Pat now. Hello, Reverend. Hello, Miss Hubbard. It's a good thing you rang those bells. We were completely lost. Never mind, we're all right now. The Lord is our guide, said the Reverend. Come and have some tea. There's plenty in the pot. Thanks, just what I need, said Pat. There was some milk for Jess. Look, said Miss Hubbard. It's much lighter outside. The sun was shining and a breeze had blown the fog away. Ah, that's much better, said Pat. Now I can get on with my letters. Come on, Jess. Cheerio. Farewell. Bye, Pat. It was lovely driving along in the sunshine without getting lost. Look, Jess, that scarecrow's still waiting for a letter.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman and his black and white cat. Early in the morning, just as day is dawning, he picks up all the post bags in his van. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Everybody knows his bright red van. All his friends will smile as he waves to greet them. Maybe you can never be sure there'll be knock, ring, letters through your door. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man.
There was deep snow in Greendale. Peter Fogg was busy clearing the roads. Nobody could get about until he had shifted the snow. Postman Pat, and Sam Waldron, and Miss Hubbard followed in Peter's tracks. The Reverend Timms was clearing his path. He waved to Pat as he slowly went by. Keep my seat warm, Jess. Morning, Mrs. Goggins. Isn't this snow awful? It's a good thing Peter Fogg's clearing some of the roads. We'd never have got through without him.
They do say there's 10-foot drifts up at Intake Farm, Pat. And here's an urgent parcel for George, up at Hilltop. You'll never get there today, you know.
Oh, dear. But I'd better take it just in case. I usually manage somehow.
Well, mind how you go, Pat. We don't want you getting buried in the snow.
Oh, I'll be all right. Cheerio. We can always dig ourselves out, can't we, Jess, if we get stuck? Pat was on his way. He had to drive carefully along the slippery roads. At Greendale Farm, the twins were waiting for him. Oh! Who threw that? You little monkeys. Two can play at that game. Hey! What's going on? Oh, dear. Sorry, Mr. Thompson. I didn't know you were here. I was aiming at the twins. That's all right, Pat. It's only a bit of fun. You're just in time, 'cause the road's blocked and the snowplow's stuck in a big drift. We've come to dig it out. You could give us a hand. OK. I can't get on with my round anyway till the road's clear. I'll just give Mrs. Pottage her letters first. The snow's bad this year, Mrs. Pottage.
Well, the twins are enjoying it.
Yes, so I've discovered.
Bye, Pat.
Peter Fogg was already digging when they got to the snowplough.
Here we are, Ted. This is the spot. Whoops. Don't worry, Peter. We'll have you out in no time. Thank goodness for that. Phew, it's warm work, I can tell you. Come on, lads, put your backs into it. Hang on, I'll see if I can get through now.
He took a run at the snowdrift.
Come on, Pete, you can do it.
He was through. The twins had been busy. Bye.
Bye, Pat. Bye.
Pat stopped at the vicarage with a letter for the Reverend Timms. But Dr. Gilbertson came to the door instead.
Come in, Pat. The poor Reverend slipped on the ice and broken his leg.
Oh dear, that is bad news.
Hello, Pat. Just look at this. Isn't it stupid?
A piece of bad luck, I'd say, Reverend. But I've brought a letter to cheer you up.
Ah, yes, from Cousin Sylvia. That'll make good reading. Oh, but what about the Parish magazine? I was going to take it round today.
I can take it with my letters, said Pat. No trouble at all. I'll see they get through. Cheerio, Reverend. At Thompson Ground, Dorothy Thompson was out collecting the eggs.
I hope you haven't any letters for Hilltop,
She said.
The snow's so bad that Peter had to turn back. The plough just couldn't get up the hill.
I've got a parcel for George marked urgent. What can I do? Perhaps I could walk it.
I've got a better idea. We can use the old farm sledge. I've got to take some food up for the sheep.
Well, it's a long time since I was on a sledge. But it looks like the only way of getting the parcel there.
Here we are,
Said Alf.
You'd better take George some groceries.
Said Dorothy.
He might be running short, being snowed up like this.
They loaded up the sledge. Off they went.
It was hard going uphill, but lovely downhill. The sheep were glad to see them. Just look at that drift. George's house was nearly buried. Hello? Anybody in? George was out. He'd gone to feed his sheep. So Pat left the food and the parcel on the table. We'll have a fast ride downhill, said Alf. Give us a push. Hold on, here we go. Hold on, Pat. Help! Oh! 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 Oh dear! You all right, Pat? All in one piece, I think. Hold tight. Hey! Mind that tree. Whoa! Ho, 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 ho. Whoop! Hey! My goodness. That's one way of delivering a parcel. We'll need a hot drink after that, said Alf. Here we are, all ready for you. Jess was glad he'd stayed by the warm fire. Thanks, Mrs. Thompson. Just what I need. Aye, there's nought like a good cup of tea. Thanks for the ride. Goodbye. The rest of Pat's round was in the valley, and the roads had been cleared and gritted by now. No more digging or sledging today, said Pat. It takes more than snow to stop us, Jess.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat, and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing, and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Pat feels he's a really happy man.